Well, folks, a big question I've been getting since we released the trailer for my interview with President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine is, why go to a nation under fire? Why take your crew and take that risk? And the answer is simple, because the truth matters and facts matter. We want you to be smarter and know more things. That's what this show is for. You, our Daily Wire members, deserve the truth. This is the kind of journalism your support makes possible. This is the community that fights for your values. Join us right now at dailywire.com/subscribe. So, last night, Vladimir Putin's Russia blanketed Ukraine
that
with
Keter
missiles.
tweet was really pathetic, where he's like, it's not even worth the 12 to 15 hours a day I put it on this platform. Oh, my God.
And drones in what was perhaps the largest scale air attack on the country since 2022. One missile apparently now struck an apartment building in Kyiv and killed 9 people and wounded another 63. This, of course, is a war zone. A little bit earlier yesterday, the Trump administration rolled out its proposed outline for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. This was being negotiated in London. It's a peace deal under which Ukraine would have been forced to accept Russian annexation of Crimea. That's the very southern portion of Ukraine that is on the Black Sea, as well as control of eastern Ukraine. Russia is currently in control of large swaths of eastern Ukraine and has been since 2014. It would have removed NATO membership from the table for Ukraine. Ukraine obviously is interested in joining NATO because that would mean that an attack on a NATO member would allow for Article 5 invocation, meaning other countries would have to come to Ukraine's defense. The deal would prevent Ukraine from becoming a NATO member. It would have provided little or nothing in the way of security guarantees for Ukraine. So the proposed Trump deal did not obligate the United States to come to Ukraine's defense or even allow for the EU's defense.
The last 3 or 4 weeks, the algorithm has been so bad on X, it's hard to justify putting 12 to 15 hours a day on here and busting your ass when you just get throttled to hell and back for no reason. I've talked to hundreds of large account creators, and it's the same for all of them. None of them understand this insane strategy. It makes no sense throttling the hell out of everyone when X should want their advertisers getting as many views as possible. I just don't get it. I know everyone understands what I'm talking about because it's happening to everyone.
Defense of Ukraine. Maybe they could have, maybe they couldn't have, but that was unclear. And it also would have full-scale ended sanctions on Russia. So clearly this peace deal gave Russia a bunch of things that Russia was looking for if it had been accepted by Ukraine. Russia has not accepted a peace arrangement along any of these lines. We should be clear about this. Essentially, the proposal that was published was the United States, Europe, and maybe Ukraine kind of negotiating against themselves because there's no one else at the table right now. Now, Zelensky rejected handing over Crimea legally because that would be making a major legal concession without actually getting anything from Russia in return. If you preemptively say Crimea is now part of Russia, you've now said it, and Zelensky doesn't want to do that. He has accepted the Trump proposal for a 30-day ceasefire without any preconditions. That has been true for weeks. Vladimir Putin has not for 1 second, which is why last night the Russian missiles were falling on Kyiv. They're also falling on Lviv, which is in the western part of the country. It was a bad night in Ukraine. Now, Putin, again, has at no point actually given any sign that he truly wants the war to end. If you want the war to end, the question is, will Zelensky accept an end to the war, and will Putin accept an end to the war? Zelensky has said he will. Putin has given no sign whatsoever that he actually will. Instead, it seems like he's slow playing this thing. He seems to be biding his time, waiting for the United States to pull out of negotiations and out of funding Ukraine entirely. And that's a bet that could pay off, given the Trump administration's repeated statements that if no deal is accepted, the United States will simply walk away from the table. Here was Vice President J.D. Vance saying just that yesterday.
Well, I'm going to echo something Secretary Rubio said, which is, look, we've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians. What do Ukrainians care the most about? What do the Russians care the most about? And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal.
Okay, well, whether the proposal is fair or not, if Russia refuses to accept the deal and then the United States walks away, Russia is the party that actually benefits from that. The Trump administration's pressure right now has been almost solely relegated to Ukraine at this point. That's just the reality. President Trump unleashed a post on Truth Social yesterday attacking Vladimir Zelensky and blaming him for the continuation of the war. He stated, quote, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. This statement, says President Trump, is very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama and is not even a point of discussion. Nobody's asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory. But if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired? Well, if that's true, then nobody's asking for Zelensky to actually recognize Crimea as Russian territory. What's the discussion that's happening? President Trump continues, the area also houses, for many years before the Obama handover, major Russian submarine bases. It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that make it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. We can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia, but have much to do with wanting to save, on average, 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week who are dying for no reason whatsoever. The statement made by Zelensky today will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and nobody wants that. We're very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess. Again, this is President Trump saying this. That would have never started if I were president. Unquote. Now listen, President Trump's frustration is...
How long is this interview with Zelensky? Was it just like 30 minutes or something? Or I thought the majority of this, well, I guess the majority of the video is, but he's talking for so much. What the fuck?
It's clear and understandable. But let's be also clear about this. For this conflict to end, Russia has to come to the table. Why is the question what Ukraine is willing to do, when the real question here is why Russian aggression has not stopped for a single moment for 3 years? The American people, obviously, we need to understand just why it is important for Ukraine not to collapse amidst the escalation of Russia's invasion. So, with the Russia-Ukraine war now in year number 3, with tens of thousands of dead on each side and hundreds of thousands wounded, probably 50,000 dead on the Ukrainian side, maybe 200,000 dead on the Russian side, with eastern Ukraine and Crimea currently in Russian hands, and with the Trump administration obviously trying to end the war through negotiation, we felt that now is a vital time to actually travel to Ukraine to discuss this crisis with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky.
Wow.
The American people have a lot of questions, and they have a right to know why they should care about this conflict in a faraway place, and to have their questions answered on matters ranging from how their tax dollars are being spent, to the treatment of Christians in Ukraine, from the nature of Russia's aspirations in Ukraine, to the Ukrainian desire to remain free of Russian domination. So, the trip into Ukraine wasn't exactly easy. It's, of course, a war zone. First, we traveled some 12 hours from Florida to Krakow, that's Poland, and then we took a 10-hour car ride with security from Poland to Kyiv. The border crossing was pretty much deserted. Not a lot of people are trying to get into Ukraine at this point in time. The country itself, it's a beautiful country. The breadbasket of the continent.
The biochemical lefty. Just wanted to appreciate you for a second. You broke me out of my inability to read long documents or longer documents to build an understanding of a topic and draw my passion for politics and how important they are. Thanks for all the work you do. Wow, thanks, buddy.
Western Ukraine, which is what you drive through to get to Kyiv, is rolling farmland dotted with forest. My great-great-grandparents came originally from this general region, Belarus, Poland, Ukraine. I tried to see it through their eyes we were driving. What it must have been like 150 years ago, before the carnage of the Ukrainian Holodomor, which is the Stalin-created genocidal starvation campaign against Ukrainian farmers and their families, and against those who oppose the evil of Soviet collectivization. And what it was like before the Nazi invasion in 1941 and the mass slaughter of Jews, with roving bands of SS mowing down tens of thousands of Jews over open pits in Babi Yar, shipping Jews via train to death camps all over Europe. Timothy Snyder, historian and author of a book called Bloodlands, Europe Between Hitler and Stalin, writes, quote, during the years that both Stalin and Hitler were in power, more people were killed in Ukraine than anywhere else in the Bloodlands or in Europe or in the world. For both Hitler and Stalin, Ukraine was more than a source of food. It was the place that would enable them to break the rules of traditional economics, rescue their countries from poverty and isolation, and remake the continent in their own image. If you know history, the voices of all of our brothers' blood cries out from the ground of Ukraine. And the history of Ukraine's suffering doesn't stop with World War II. After the war, the Soviet Union again was in control of Ukraine. Its history was then steamrolled and homogenized to fit Soviet presumptions. After the Cold War, after the Soviet Union fell, Ukraine broke free. It became independent. It gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for security guarantees from the West. Didn't go well for Ukraine, obviously.
Though we're not security guarantees, just to be clear on that, but they kind of were. They were like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of, but...
Torn between the attraction of joining the post-Soviet West and Russian pressure from the East, the country was governed by a series of corruption-ridden governments, culminating in the victory of Viktor Yanukovych, whose pro-Russian swing led to the so-called Maidan Revolution of 2014. Yanukovych was ousted. Vladimir Putin, dictator of Russia, seeing Ukraine slipping out of his grasp, then launched invasions of the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine, as well as Crimea. Both of those were largely Russian-speaking areas that favored a closer relationship with Russia, but they didn't actually want to be fully ruled by Russia, by the polling data available at the time. Instead, Putin brought in what were called little green men, who he said were sort of domestic insurgents, they were actually Russian soldiers, to take over those areas. Citizens of those areas were brought under Russian control. And then came 2022. Sensing weakness from the American-led North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the aftermath of Joe Biden's surrender of Afghanistan to the Taliban, Putin launched a full-scale invasion of the rest of Ukraine. When the war began, few expected Ukraine to survive. Indeed, the first Russian push into Ukraine came within 10 or 12 kilometers of Kyiv, the capital city, which is located on both sides of the Dnieper River. Actually, Vladimir Zelensky was made offers by the Europeans to flee the country. But Ukraine instead fought suspicious activity.
We're good.
Meeting that you had. President Zelensky, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for coming, Ben.
So I want to start by asking you about the meeting that you had in the Oval Office with the president and the vice president. This is almost a couple of months ago. Obviously, things went sideways. How do you feel that you could have handled things better with the president and vice president?
I wonder how edited this is. That's really his very first question. Jeez, that's kind of rough, but okay.
After this meeting, our teams had plenty of meetings. Well, not enough of meetings to put an end to this war, but still there were positive meetings. There were meetings that were fruitful, and our teams have agreed that everyone will support the complete ceasefire mode, and that was a meeting in Saudi Arabia. Then there was another meeting, then it was a meeting in France. Tomorrow, by the way, there will be a meeting in London. So as you can see, that what's important to us is the teams of Ukraine and the United States, plus our European colleagues. That is, our team has started to work together with the United States, and I can see some positive things about this. I'm grateful to this, to all the partners, and I'm grateful to President Trump for this, as well as to Keir Starmer and to the Emmanuel Macron and to all the leaders who constantly support this very beginning, the complete ceasefire. It's the beginning of the path towards the stable and hopefully fair and just peace. And that is why I think we do have good meetings right now, and I would say good possibilities. Now the question is Russia, and that is the only element in this construct that is not yet ready to put an end to this war, and we hope on the strengths of the United States, on the strengths in terms of the sanctions, on the experience of the United States, and the influence that the United States has on Russia. So for the Russia to agree to put an end to this war, it depends on them. As for our meeting in the Oval Office, I kept saying that we needed this meeting. We had to talk over a variety of elements. We had different meetings, fruitful and more philosophic meetings, I would say, on different stages of our life, and the meeting with President Trump as well. So I think that the meeting in the Oval Office, it did not help Ukraine, it did not help to the United States, and no one, I think we should, when Ukraine and the United States are having the
Bro, this translator, is this live translated? They couldn't just sit down and write a script out for it, or were they trying to get this out ASAP? Whatever. Also, wait, real quick question. Do you just set up artillery turrets at the edge of this and then bomb shit and then have robots deliver ammo? Or do you actually set up artillery train wagons? Setting up the artillery wagon seems cringe as fuck.
I think we should, when Ukraine and the United States are having the meeting, we should give light to people. We should demonstrate this path that I've already mentioned, to a path towards the end of this war. We count on the strategic partnership, and we always respected the people of the United States and the choice of the United States and the support coming from the United States. And that is why I think that we will have more fruitful meetings with President Trump. But you have to understand, Ukraine, that we are defending against the Russia's offense. And we believe Russia is an enemy. We believe United States is a true and real friend. We know that the United States has a position to serve as the mediator in this conflict. That is the choice made by the United States. But we consider the United States as a strong strategic partner with an influence. And we would really like to have these two strengths that would be used towards Russia, so that the force would be towards the Russia, because they're the one who's the aggressor. And we would like really to have this common understanding that Russia is the aggressor, not we. And we really want the United States not to search for the balance in these words. I understand what President Trump is willing to have. I highly respect the fact that he's searching for an approach. That's his approach. Somebody might have different approach, but you shouldn't be saying that Ukraine and Russia started this war. I believe that it's painful for our people to hear, and this is why we respond in this way. We're talking about the dignity of our country. We have demonstrated that we are ready to protect our dignity in any situation. I'm doing that as the president. We have clearly demonstrated that in the beginning of the war. It was the war. It still remains the war. We have only one enemy, Russia and Putin. And that is why, even if we're talking a diplomatic environment, everything that is related to the Ukraine's dignity, I will always defend it. This is my job. I'm the president. I'm the guarantor of the Constitution of Ukraine.
So, Mr. President, there are a lot of questions in the United States about how American funding is spent. So we've spent nearly allocated nearly $200 billion to the defense of Ukraine. There are lots of questions about where the money is going, to pensions, to war profiteering, to corruption. How do you answer those questions? What kind of transparency can you provide to the American people to guarantee that their taxpayer dollars are being used in the best possible way to fight Russia, to defend Ukraine, and to ensure that if the United States wants, would an audit be possible by the United States of where those dollars are going?
Oh my God.
Yes, let me start with the end of your question. As for the audit, the United States have to understand there's United States inspectors working. There's the inspectors of European countries, because they've also allocated the money, and we are also grateful to them. Just as to the United States, we highly respect the support and assistance coming from the people of the United States as well as the people of Europe. That is why we have told at once that we are ready to have any inspections from the very beginning of the war. The inspectors coming from the United States, Europe, and our own inspectors, they're working. We have complete reporting, counting, absolutely transparent within the Ministry of Defense. There is access to all the figures starting from the very first year of the war. There's been always an access. When we've seen in the very beginning of the war that Russia attempted to undermine the support and assistance coming from the United States, because the United States was the main donor, and they wanted to undermine this through fake news, through other tools. That is why we told it once that we are open, send the inspectors, and they were inspectors. So as for the audit, we're always ready to any audit. There's nothing to hide. We're absolutely open, transparent, and that is what's happening. There's all the reports available. The second aspect, I never wanted to, well, I was grateful to all the U.S. taxpayers. I understand that the United States have different programs, directions, and that is also related to the weapon support and to the assistance of other countries of the world. I want to be absolutely frank. That's with regards to the audit. I have my own internal audit, and I clearly understand how much assistance coming from which country at which moment was provided to Ukraine. I'm not responding fully to saying that United States has transferred something around 200 billion. I'm responding to the facts. The United States could be
Sounds like a fucking hostage.
registering that, could be voting, and we are grateful to the bipartisan support in the Congress, because we are grateful to this unity around the fight of Ukraine for the independence and your great assistance and the great contribution of the United States in the defense of our people. But I have my own internal audit, and my country is clearly documenting how many assistance was provided. Just for you to know, we had 105 billion US dollars. Most of those money were in the form of weapons. Now, that's first thing. All of those weapons came. The money were paid to the transportation of those weapons. Ukrainian companies were not allowed to transport this money. That's why we haven't received, not in the public, not in the private sector, the money for the transportation. There were different assistance programs, the training of Ukrainian soldiers abroad. There's many things. I'm documenting and registering what we have. I understand there could be different calculations, different assistance programs or aid programs, but this is like an audit, really. You are verifying what was the output, so to say, and we kind of verify what was the input. We verify this because we need to, keep the phase in our relations with the key strategic partner. It's very important. It's not that we're arguing that United States have said that we're giving you 200 and Ukraine is saying, no, it's 100. No, it's not an arguing. It's not a dispute, but it's important that both countries and the taxpayers, they should know where their money are. So that's it. And I kept saying all the time, it's not that I'm not, properly responding to 200, 300, 400. No. I'm responding to what was the input, so to say, how many money came to Ukraine. Now, in terms of the use of those money, primarily that was for the weapons. They were used on the battlefield. And the audit that I've mentioned clearly documented that whether this weapon was used on the battlefield or in accordance to some of the information been posted on the media, primarily that were the Russian narratives that some of the weapons were sent elsewhere, or there was some corruption related to this weapon, something was sold. No. All the audit that took place, not a single time has found any fact of sales of U.S. weapons to somewhere abroad. So there were no information like that in any of the audit. Then, secondly, the funding, they support the different social programs. That was different social programs, but the salary that we pay to our soldiers, the pensions that we pay to our pensioners, and we have 11.5 million pensioners. So the salaries and the pensions, these are only paid from the Ukrainian budget, this only by the Ukrainian money, not because we didn't need the kind of financial support or the support to the people. There were different aspects, infrastructural aspects, etc. We needed all of that, and we are grateful to all that. But the United States have to know that they were not feeding our pensioners and our soldiers with regards to the salary.
This audio is giving me schizophrenia. Yeah, Jesus.
Or the compensation. Surely you've provided the most important aspect, that is the weapons we needed to defend. Now, those things are very important. Now, there's special programs or separate programs, and we have the clear figures behind those. When the United States were paying money for the development of a certain direction in the technological kind of development, like in new drones, and there were direct funding either in the private sector that was constructing the drones like that. What the United States have received, well, the exchange of information. The United States, without the war, would never have received the knowledge. I'm not saying that war is good. That's horrible. But whenever we're saying what the United States have received, for example, when there were some programs, when the United States have funded the weapons and they were transferring the Patriots to us, and we are grateful to the United States, first of all, for this. They know that all the air defense systems that we had, different shells, there's artillery shells, even 155 shells could be different, the HIMARS, etc. All the Ukraine have been using. Ukraine provided the reports to the United States, and Ukraine has improved many of the elements and specifications by our engineers, by our people on the ground. They've improved the specifications of the weapons. The United States have received a true report based on the largest land war in many years. So now the United States know where to invest the money, where not to invest the money. I know those conclusions, but this is not public information. But the United States have received this knowledge, this data, and this knowledge could not be acquired without the live operations. Then the United States have provided money to the development of different drones. Surely it's all about our special forces, recon, intelligence, security service of Ukraine, foreign intelligence. These are the separate money. They are part of those 105 billion. So this is where the scientists were working, the recon, the intelligence, the military engineers were working. Now, what the United States have received, when the United States have paid for those developments, the United States have received complete and open information on the drones. This is the new weapons that was not available to the United States, to Europe, and surely we didn't have it. Now, the United States have received all this experience, all this know-how and developments. Now, I'm not willing to say that it's a cheap price for all of those developments. We are grateful to every single cent paid by the United States, but this is the fair price, so to say. The knowledge, the experience, that the whole world is based on the knowledge, and I believe that this is what the United States have received. Then how are medics being operating on the battlefield? Everyone knows about this. There's medical points or medical stations close to the battlefield where the military surgeries have been taking place. There's medical assistance of different sort that has been provided. Now, all this knowledge, all this experience were transferred to our partners. They've seen that they could make conclusions. The support to the people, the United States, together with the Europeans, have provided the support to the people, and I can give you the conclusions. You can compare the number of killed and the number of casualties. Now, I'm not comparing the Russian army with the Ukrainian army, but look at the portion of the wounded in action and killed in action. We have the portion of the wounded in action the lowest. If we have 1 to 10, that is 1 killed, you have 10 wounded in action. Now, in case of Russians, in case of 10 casualties, there will be 5 wounded in action, 5 killed in action, or 6 by 4. So we're saying that's a different level of medical support, and that knowledge was also provided to our partners. Now, what exactly the United States have received as well. This is the most important thing that I have not mentioned yet. Let's be frank. The people in the world, they believe that we are living kind of fence against the Russia's invasion to the civilized world, including the NATO member nations. And we are kind of a living shield. We are defending this. So if Putin will come to the NATO member countries, or when he will do that, I don't believe that I know everything in advance, but let's just imagine, because everyone see who they have case with, so Putin might go to the European countries. Now, in this case, there would be a need to defend the European nations or to leave the NATO. I'm not saying whether the United States should be doing that or not. That's the choice made by the people of the United States and other allies, but this is a question that will definitely be on the agenda. So as long as Russians are not in any single NATO member nation, your families are not facing with this question. So there will be a major question for your families, either to send your child to the war or not, to the other country, to some foreign country. So that's the kind of question. Now, the cost of United States not searching, and the families are not searching for an answer to this complicated question of whether to send their son or daughter, whether they will return home, like and alive or wounded. Nobody knows the cost of that question.
I am from Sri Lanka. From my journalism experience, we have a term called spirit of meeting. Does Americans not use the same idea? Yeah, we do. We say the same thing. What's in the spirit of this? Yeah.
Whether the United States is the kind of the most the richest economy in the world, whether this is the biggest amount paid for what's been provided. I'm not saying that's a small amount. I'm saying that this is the fair. This is fair. It's fair that the United States supported Ukraine, and Ukraine gave away a lot in return for that support and assistance. And of course, the most precious thing we have is the life of our people.
So I want to get to Russia's intentions in a moment and the possibilities of a ceasefire. But Americans have questions about things that are happening here. So there have been a lot of accusations that there's been a crackdown on religious freedom in Ukraine, particularly with regard to the Russian Orthodox Church. I just watched you perform a meeting with the all-church meeting with members of a wide variety of faiths. Maybe you can respond to the accusations that there's a restriction on religious freedom with regard to Russian Orthodox in Ukraine.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that you're here. that you had a chance to take a look. And really, we have a meeting like that a couple of times per year, and I truly visit some of the churchill sites, and during the Easter, there's the Eastern meetings and the Passover, and we have a meeting with all of our religious institutions. And I believe that what Ukraine has, and that is the largest council of churches, the largest in Europe. All of our churches are united, different religious, and everyone is united. So we are considering the question. There is the problem in military chaplains, the mobilization of pastors or not, or priests. There's different questions. We help one another. We believe that the religious actors, if they're on the front line, it could be only through their will voluntarily, and they should be supporting military. Now, if those religious actors, if they're willing to do that, we are kind of considering every single question. We do not believe that these are the major challenges, because we are having a meeting. And if you have a regular meeting, so if you have a regular dialogue, then all the big challenges, they kind of remain, but only small ones. And in many cases, we solve those challenges, but they're not catastrophic. They're not tragic for the country and for the religious unity that we have in Ukraine. And we are openly doing that. Now, they advocate what you've heard, like abroad. They have one single voice, different faith, but single voice. Nobody's pressing anyone. So today, Sviatoslav went to prepare to. He went to Rome, and there's all those ceremonies around the Pope Francis. So Sviatoslav went there. Went to Rome. He needs that's correct, and I'm also planning together with my wife to have a visit. We'll have several meetings around the same dates. Now, as for the pressure, there's no pressure, and you will never hear about anything about the pressure, because we don't have any additional dialogues with our religious institutions or religious leaders. There's no shadow practices. We're absolutely open, transparent. There could be cameras or no cameras. We're absolutely open. Everyone can tell you there's no pressure. That's non-existent, and every holidays we are together. We have people from different religions, and we're always inviting everyone. That's important. As for the Moscow Church, look, the question is not about the Moscow Church. The question is that in case of Russia, Moscow is just another agency of the KGB. Everyone knows that Russia's special services are in control of the churches. Well, this is how they have. That's their choice, and their people either support that or not. Well, that's their choice. That's their right. And we've never raised this question before the war and during the war. But that's a fact, that their special services are in control of the church. The problem was that their special forces was in control of the churches in Ukraine. That's not the truth. The church should be equal, and the Moscow could not be in control of our church. Their KGB, their intelligence could not be in control or could not be managing the Ukrainian church. Well, they shouldn't be here. So the legislative changes in Ukraine are related to the fact that there could be no connection in between of the Moscow and the church. Nobody closed anything or anyone, but it can't be the case that Russia's KGB is in control of the church in Ukraine. Everyone is against this legal ties. So it's not only about the ties at the level of intelligence. There was a legal connection, legal ties for many years, but that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't be having disputes or controversies around whose church is older than the others. And Ukraine is not shouldn't be speaking about this. Look, we're sitting here close to the Sofia Cathedral. Sofia is older than Russia's capital city, and any churches they have.
This retarded translation is 100% intentional by the Daily Wire to make Zelensky look bad. I mean, like, I don't know anything about live translating. Right? I don't know anything about translating anything, period. So I could be wrong. But my guess is going to be, this guy sounds like a person who does live translations. So especially for like news broadcasts, you would have a guy like this translating live, like what Ben Shapiro's listening in on his earpiece is probably this, is my guess. But if you're going to do like prepared content, if you're going to release a video afterwards, then that would be a professional translation that's maybe even the same guy could do it, but it would be somebody who listens to the full thing, has opportunity to write down a script for it and then read it off so that the translation is less hectic sounding. This almost sounds live to me, which I don't know why you would publish a YouTube video like that, but
this building is older than that. That's the answer. We shouldn't have any disputes. We have scientific evidences. We're just saying that our church should be free from any authorities. It's free for the people.
So one of the other questions that's been asked is about military mobilization. So, obviously you're in the middle of a war. At the same time, there have been reports online that people are being picked up off the streets in places in eastern Ukraine and recruited into services. How do you respond to accusations and videos like that?
Дивіться,
Look,
And
кожен
videos.
випадок.
every single case is scrutinized by the land forces, by the Ministry of Defense. They're the one responsible for the mobilization. And it can have a different attitude towards mobilization, but we have this mobilization from the beginning of the war. It's in accordance to the legislation, in accordance to the martial law period. So the country is in a war. That is why we do have mobilization. We want the war to end. We want everything to end. We want to have a fair peace, calmness, and there would be nothing, not the mobilization, not the martial law. But as long as the war, as long as we have the law, there is the mobilization. That is why there were different aspects, like someone suggested money, someone took money for going or not going to the army. There's different approaches, or there are different cases, but we shouldn't be saying that this is the major phase or the main thing that describes Ukraine today. No, Ukraine has 800,000 right now, or 600,000 people who volunteered to go to the army. That was the law on mobilization, but the people were volunteering to go and defend Ukraine. Definitely, there's different people, and I think there's different people in every country, and the law enforcement personnel should be making sure that everything would be transparent. There would be no coercion or something. There are some kind of disadvantages. That's a fact. We shouldn't be hiding that, like a corruption. But if we have any anti-corruption bodies, there's the security service of Ukraine is. If we are fighting with this on an everyday basis, well, of course you can hide it, like everything, as in case of Russia or some European countries. But Ukraine clearly shows that it is fighting on a constant basis against aspects like that. But those are kind of singular cases. This is not massive. That's more important, and that should be reducing on a daily basis. We're doing that.
As we mentioned, we left Kyiv on Tuesday night. On Wednesday night, Kyiv was hit with one of the biggest missile barrages of the war. We've been checking in on many of the people we met in Ukraine to ensure that they are safe. We'll bring you any updates. That was
Thanks.
part one of our interview with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday afternoon.
Jesus.
Part two will continue on tomorrow's show. We'll get some more on this in a moment. First, according to a recent ZipRecruiter survey, 76% of employers.
Okay, that was a little hectic. Pisco's talking to Richard Hanania. I don't know if anything comes out of that. That's good. I guess you can let me know.